The morning sun barely touched the frost-covered training grounds when Maya Chen stepped out of the dormitory for what everyone believed would be her last day at the academy. At 18, she had become the subject of whispered conversations and pitying glances from both instructors and fellow cadets. Her small frame, standing barely 5 feet 2 inches, seemed to disappear among the towering figures of her male counterparts who dominated every physical challenge. The academy's commanding officer, Colonel Harrison, had made his decision clear during the previous week's evaluation meeting. Maya's performance scores painted a picture of mediocrity that the military simply couldn't afford. Her marksmanship ranked in the bottom 10%. Her physical endurance test showed consistent failures, and her tactical simulations resulted in more losses than wins. The other instructors nodded in agreement as they reviewed her file, each marking down recommendations for dismissal. What none of them knew was that Maya had been deliberately underperforming for months. Hidden beneath her unassuming exterior was a mind that processed information at an extraordinary rate, and a body trained in disciplines that the academy had never tested. Her real training had begun years earlier, in unmarked facilities where failure meant more than just dismissal from school. During her childhood in a small mountain village, Maya had caught the attention of certain government officials who recognized potential that others missed entirely. While her classmates played normal childhood games, Maya was learning to read people's micro-expressions, to move without making sound, and to remember details that others would forget within minutes. Her parents believed she was attending a special gifted program, never knowing the true nature of her education. The academy represented just another phase of her cover identity. Every failed test, every stumbled run, every missed target had been carefully calculated to maintain the illusion of incompetence. She had watched as more capable students received recognition and opportunities, knowing that her own path led somewhere entirely different. As Maya walked across the courtyard that morning, she noticed the way conversations stopped when she passed. Some students offered sympathetic smiles, others simply looked away in embarrassment. She had become a cautionary tale about the importance of meeting standards, a reminder of what happened when natural ability fell short of military expectations. The dismissal ceremony was scheduled for 10 o'clock, a formal procedure that would officially end her military career before it had truly begun. Maya's belongings were already packed in a single duffel bag, everything she owned fitting easily into the standard issue container. To observers, it seemed like a sad ending to a brief and unsuccessful chapter. But as Maya sat on her narrow dormitory bed, staring out the window at the training grounds where she had deliberately failed so many tests, she felt no sadness. Instead, there was anticipation. Her real handlers had been waiting for this moment, when her official military record would show a clean dismissal for inadequate performance. It was the perfect cover for what came next. The other cadets avoided eye contact as Maya made her way to the administration building. They had all heard the stories about students who washed out, how they struggled to find their place in civilian life after experiencing the structure and purpose of military training. None of them suspected that Maya's journey was just beginning, that her apparent failure was actually the successful completion of an elaborate deception. Colonel Harrison's office felt larger than usual as Maya stood at attention before his desk. The familiar weight of disappointment filled the room as he reviewed her file one final time. His words about missed opportunities and potential squandered felt rehearsed, delivered with the tired authority of someone who had conducted too many similar meetings. As the colonel signed the dismissal papers, Maya maintained the expression of quiet resignation that had served her so well throughout her time at the academy. She accepted his handshake and his final words of advice about finding her place in the civilian world. Neither of them knew that within hours Maya would receive a phone call that would activate a completely different identity, one that carried a codename that struck fear into the hearts of enemies across 3 continents. 3 days after leaving the academy, Maya sat in a downtown coffee shop, stirring her drink slowly while watching reflections in the window. To anyone observing, she appeared to be just another young woman adjusting to life after a military disappointment. Her clothes were ordinary, her posture relaxed, and her attention seemed focused on the book open before her. But every few seconds her eyes would shift to monitor the movements of people both inside and outside the establishment. The phone call came at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon, just as her mysterious contact had promised months earlier. The voice on the other end spoke only a series of numbers and a location, nothing more. Maya finished her coffee, paid with exact change, and left without any sign of urgency. She had been preparing for this moment since her deliberate academy failure, though even she didn't fully understand what lay ahead. The address led her to an unremarkable office building in the business district, the kind of place where insurance companies and accounting firms rented space by the floor. Maya took the elevator to the 7th floor and found the specific suite number. The door bore no company name, only the numbers that matched her instructions. When she knocked, it opened immediately, as if someone had been watching her approach. Inside waited a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. She introduced herself simply as Director Walsh and gestured for Maya to take a seat in what appeared to be a standard conference room. But Maya noticed details that others might miss: the slight thickness of the walls that suggested soundproofing, the absence of windows despite being on the 7th floor, and the subtle electronic humming that indicated sophisticated surveillance equipment. Director Walsh opened a file folder and began reading from Maya's real history, not the fabricated record from the academy. She spoke about test scores that had never appeared in any official documentation, about training exercises conducted in facilities that didn't exist on any government map, and about psychological evaluations that painted a picture completely different from the failed cadet everyone thought they knew. For the first time in months, Maya allowed her true intelligence to show in her responses. She answered complex questions about international politics, demonstrated fluency in languages she had supposedly never studied, and solved tactical problems that would challenge experienced military strategists. The transformation was remarkable, like watching someone shed a carefully constructed disguise to reveal their authentic self. Director Walsh explained that Maya's dismissal from the academy had been orchestrated from the beginning. Every failed test, every disappointed instructor, every sympathetic classmate had been part of an elaborate performance designed to create the perfect cover identity. Now that Maya was officially just another washout, she could disappear into her real assignment without anyone questioning her absence from normal life. The briefing that followed lasted 4 hours and covered material that would overwhelm most people. Maya learned about international criminal organizations that operated beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement, about technologies that officially didn't exist, and about threats to national security that never appeared in public reports. Her mission would require her to infiltrate groups that killed people for merely asking the wrong questions. As evening approached, Director Walsh handed Maya a new identity package, complete with documentation that would withstand the most thorough investigation. Her new name carried a history of employment at various consulting firms, each real enough to verify but unremarkable enough to avoid attracting attention. Bank accounts had been established, references prepared, and even a rental history created to support her cover story. The most crucial element of her new identity was the codename that would be activated only in the most extreme circumstances. Director Walsh explained that certain words carried power in the underground world Maya was about to enter, that reputations could be built on whispered legends and carefully cultivated mysteries. Maya's codename had been chosen specifically to evoke fear in those who heard it, though she wouldn't understand its full significance until much later. Before leaving that evening, Maya underwent a final briefing about communication protocols and emergency procedures. She learned about contact methods that left no electronic traces, about safe houses hidden in major cities around the world, and about extraction procedures that could be activated with nothing more than a specific phrase spoken in the right location. As Maya walked out of the building that night, she was no longer the failed cadet who had been dismissed 3 days earlier. She was someone entirely new, carrying skills and knowledge that made her dangerous to enemies who didn't even know she existed yet. The real test of her training was about to begin, and failure would mean much more than just academic disappointment. 6 months into her new identity, Maya had established herself as a freelance translator working primarily with international business firms. Her apartment in the city's financial district provided the perfect cover for someone who needed to maintain irregular hours and receive visitors from various countries. Neighbors knew her as Sarah Mitchell, a quiet professional who traveled frequently for work and kept to herself. The assignment that would change everything began with a seemingly routine translation job. A European investment firm needed someone to handle documents related to their expansion into Asian markets. Maya's linguistic skills made her an obvious choice, and the generous payment offered for discretionary work aligned perfectly with her cover story of building a high-end consulting practice. What the investment firm didn't know was that Maya had been specifically maneuvered into this position by her handlers. Intelligence agencies had been tracking suspicious financial movements between European banks and organizations in Southeast Asia, patterns that suggested something far more significant than legitimate business investments. Maya's job was to penetrate this network and determine whether criminal organizations were using the investment firm as a front for money laundering operations. During her first week at the firm's temporary offices, Maya worked alongside a team of international consultants, each handling different aspects of the expansion project. She quickly identified the key players and began mapping their relationships and communication patterns. Her years of training in reading people served her well as she noted which conversations stopped when certain names were mentioned and which documents were handled with unusual security measures. The breakthrough came during her third week when she was asked to translate a series of contracts that appeared to involve legitimate shipping arrangements. But Maya's trained eye caught discrepancies in the cargo descriptions and delivery schedules that suggested the documents were covering something entirely different. The shipping manifests referenced container weights that didn't match the declared contents, and delivery dates were coordinated with currency fluctuations in ways that made no sense for normal business operations. As Maya dug deeper into the financial records, she discovered a complex web of shell companies and numbered accounts that funneled money through multiple countries before reaching its final destination. The investment firm was indeed a front, but for something much more dangerous than simple money laundering. The financial network was being used to fund arms purchases and mercenary operations in conflict zones where official military intervention was politically impossible. Her investigation revealed that the European investment firm was connected to a private military contractor known for taking on jobs that governments couldn't officially approve. Maya found evidence of payments for operations in 3 different countries, each involving the destabilization of local governments that had become inconvenient for certain international interests. The money trail led back to a consortium of multinational corporations that profited from regional instability. The most disturbing discovery came when Maya uncovered communications about an upcoming operation that would target a democratically elected government in a mineral-rich African nation. The planned coup would be disguised as a popular uprising, but would actually be orchestrated by mercenaries funded through the investment firm's financial network. Thousands of innocent civilians would die to protect corporate mining interests. Maya knew she had stumbled onto something that went far beyond her original assignment. The scope of the conspiracy involved multiple governments and international corporations, with financial resources that dwarfed anything she had encountered in her training scenarios. She was a single agent facing an organization with unlimited resources and no moral constraints. As she prepared her initial report for Director Walsh, Maya realized that her cover identity was becoming increasingly precarious. Several members of the investment firm's security team had begun asking questions about her background, and she had noticed increased surveillance around her apartment building. Her linguistic skills had provided access to information that was never intended for outside eyes. The decision to proceed with deeper infiltration would put Maya in direct contact with people who killed witnesses as routinely as most people filed paperwork. But the intelligence she had gathered suggested that stopping this operation could prevent an international catastrophe that would destabilize an entire region. Her training had prepared her for dangerous situations, but nothing could have prepared her for the moral weight of knowing that her success or failure would determine the fate of millions of people. Maya spent her last evening in her Sarah Mitchell identity preparing for a transformation that would take her deeper into the criminal organization than any agent had ever gone before. She would need to abandon the safety of her established cover and create a new persona that could gain the trust of people who trusted no one. The failed academy cadet was about to become someone who would make hardened criminals question everything they thought they knew about fear. Maya's transformation into her new identity required abandoning everything that connected her to Sarah Mitchell. She left her apartment one evening and never returned, allowing her landlord to eventually discover personal belongings that told the story of a translator who had simply vanished. Her new persona emerged in Prague 3 weeks later, complete with a criminal history that had been carefully inserted into international databases by her handlers. Elena Kozlov appeared to be a former Russian intelligence operative who had gone rogue after discovering corruption within her own agency. Her fabricated background included training in advanced surveillance techniques, weapons expertise, and most importantly, experience in financial crimes that had supposedly netted her several $1,000,000 before she decided to freelance her services to private organizations. The legend was sophisticated enough to withstand investigation by anyone except the most determined intelligence agencies. Maya's entry into the criminal organization began through a contact in Vienna who specialized in connecting skilled professionals with employers who asked no questions about their methods. She presented herself as someone seeking long-term employment with an organization sophisticated enough to appreciate her particular combination of skills. The fact that she was requesting a meeting, rather than simply accepting whatever work was offered immediately, set her apart from typical mercenaries. The initial screening process lasted 2 months and involved multiple layers of verification that tested both Elena's claimed abilities and her psychological profile. Maya found herself subjected to interviews by former military officers, psychologists, and financial experts who probed for any inconsistencies in her cover story. She demonstrated proficiency with weapon systems that weren't available to civilian purchasers, solved complex tactical problems that required years of professional training, and most critically showed the kind of moral flexibility that criminal organizations valued above all other qualities. The breakthrough came when Maya was asked to assist with a financial operation that involved moving $30 million through a series of cryptocurrency exchanges while avoiding detection by international banking authorities. Her success in completing the task within the allocated time frame while maintaining complete operational security earned her an invitation to meet with the organization's European Leadership Council. The meeting took place in a converted monastery in the Austrian countryside, a location chosen specifically for its isolation and historical significance to the organization's founding members. Maya found herself in the presence of individuals whose names appeared on international wanted lists, people who commanded resources that exceeded those of many small nations. The atmosphere in the ancient stone halls carried a weight of accumulated power and carefully contained violence. During the 3-day summit, Maya learned the true scope of the organization's global operations. They weren't simply criminals seeking profit, but rather a shadow government that influenced international events through carefully orchestrated chaos. Their clients included corporations seeking to destabilize competitive markets, governments wanting to undermine their neighbors without official involvement, and wealthy individuals who profited from regional conflicts. Maya's role in the upcoming African operation was explained during a private briefing with the organization's operations director, a man known only as the architect. She would be responsible for coordinating the financial aspects of the coup while maintaining plausible deniability for all involved parties. The operation would require her to work directly with the mercenary commanders, who would execute the actual overthrow of the government. The most chilling aspect of the briefing was learning about the organization's contingency plans for eliminating witnesses and covering their tracks. Once the operation concluded, Maya realized that her employers viewed all their assets, including her, as completely expendable once their usefulness ended. Survival would require not just completing her assigned tasks, but positioning herself as too valuable to eliminate when the operation concluded. As Maya prepared for deployment to Africa, she received intelligence updates that revealed the true humanitarian cost of allowing the operation to proceed. The targeted government had been working to establish schools and healthcare systems in rural areas, programs that would be immediately terminated by any military regime installed by the organization. The mineral extraction rights that motivated the coup would require forced labor that would essentially reestablish slavery in the affected regions. Maya's communications with her handlers became increasingly difficult as the organization's security measures intensified. She was given encrypted communication devices that monitored all transmissions, and her movements were tracked by security personnel who maintained constant surveillance. Any attempt to warn her government contacts about the operation's details would certainly result in her immediate execution. The moral complexity of her situation deepened when Maya was introduced to Colonel Reyes, the mercenary commander who would lead the ground forces during the coup attempt. Unlike the calculating criminals she had encountered in Europe, Reyes was a former Special Forces officer who genuinely believed he was serving a greater good by removing what he had been told was a corrupt and oppressive regime. Maya realized that many of the operation's participants were being manipulated just as surely as the general public would be when the coup was presented as a popular uprising. As her departure date approached, Maya faced the most difficult decision of her career. She could continue following orders and gather intelligence that might eventually help prevent similar operations, but only by allowing thousands of innocent people to die in the immediate crisis. Alternatively, she could attempt to sabotage the mission from within, knowing that failure would mean not just her own death, but the likely exposure of her entire intelligence network. The flight to Kinshasa marked the beginning of the most dangerous phase of Maya's mission. She traveled under Elena Kozlov's identity, alongside a team of 12 other specialists, each bringing skills essential to the coup operation. The group included communications experts, weapons specialists, and financial coordinators who would ensure that all evidence of foreign involvement disappeared once the new government was installed. During the 18-hour journey, Maya studied her fellow operatives and began identifying potential allies and threats within the group. Most were seasoned professionals who had participated in similar operations across multiple continents, but she noticed that several team members seemed uncomfortable with the civilian casualty projections that had been briefed during their final planning session. These moral reservations might provide opportunities for sabotage if Maya could find the right approach. Upon arrival in the capital city, the team was met by local contacts who had been preparing for the operation for over 6 months. These individuals had established legitimate business covers while secretly building networks of mercenary soldiers and corrupt government officials who would support the coup in exchange for positions in the new regime. The sophistication of their preparation demonstrated that the organization had been planning this operation for years. Maya's assigned role placed her at the center of the financial coordination effort, responsible for managing payments to local collaborators and ensuring that money transfers couldn't be traced back to the organization's European leadership. She worked from a seemingly legitimate consulting office that had been established specifically for this purpose, complete with local employees who believed they were supporting a legitimate international development project. The breakthrough opportunity came during her second week in Kinshasa when Maya discovered that the organization's local financial coordinator had been secretly documenting all transaction records as insurance against potential prosecution. This individual, known as Gabriel, had realized that he would likely become a scapegoat once the operation concluded, and had been preparing evidence that would implicate the European leadership if anything went wrong. Maya approached Gabriel carefully, using her psychological training to assess his motivations and reliability. She learned that he had a family connection to one of the villages that would be most affected by the mining operations planned for after the coup. His moral conflict provided Maya with an opportunity to create an alliance that could potentially disrupt the entire operation from within. Working with Gabriel, Maya began modifying the financial coordination protocols in ways that would appear normal to casual observation, but would actually create massive complications once the coup began. She introduced subtle delays in payment schedules that would leave key collaborators without expected funds at crucial moments, and she altered communication codes in ways that would create confusion among different operational teams. The most significant sabotage opportunity arose when Maya gained access to the mercenary payroll system. Rather than simply disrupting payments, she began redirecting funds to accounts she had secretly established in the names of legitimate humanitarian organizations working in the region. The redirected money would continue flowing until someone manually verified each transaction, which wouldn't happen until the operation was already underway. As the coup date approached, Maya faced increasing pressure from the architect, who had arrived to personally oversee the final preparations. His presence raised the operational security level dramatically, with constant surveillance and communication monitoring that made any contact with her government handlers virtually impossible. Maya realized that she would need to execute her sabotage plan without any external support or guidance. The psychological strain of maintaining her Elena Kozlov identity while secretly working to destroy the operation began affecting Maya's performance in subtle ways that threatened to expose her true loyalties. She found herself making minor errors in routine tasks and occasionally responding to situations in ways that didn't align with Elena's supposed background. Only her years of training and identity maintenance prevented these lapses from attracting fatal attention. 3 days before the scheduled coup, Maya made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing final communication protocols, she found evidence that the organization had been monitoring suspected government agents throughout the region and had identified at least 6 individuals who matched profiles similar to her own. The security net was tightening, and Maya realized that her time was running out. Regardless of whether the sabotage succeeded, the final phase of her plan required Maya to position herself where she could observe the coup's failure firsthand while maintaining plausible deniability about her role in the disruption. She volunteered for assignment to the main communications center, claiming that her linguistic skills would be valuable for coordinating with various international contacts during the critical first hours of the operation. Maya's handlers had prepared contingency extraction procedures for exactly this type of situation, but implementing them would require her to abandon Gabriel and any other local allies who had helped with the sabotage effort. The moral weight of potentially condemning people who had trusted her to death or imprisonment conflicted with her training to prioritize mission completion above all other considerations. As Maya made final preparations for what she knew would be either the successful prevention of a humanitarian catastrophe or her own death, she realized that the failed academy cadet everyone had dismissed was about to attempt something that even experienced intelligence operatives would consider impossible. The next 24 hours would determine whether years of careful planning and personal sacrifice had been worthwhile, or whether the organization's resources and ruthlessness would ultimately prevail. The coup began at 4:30 in the morning with coordinated attacks on government buildings, communication centers, and military installations throughout the capital. Maya watched from the main operations center as the architect directed teams across the city, his calm demeanor reflecting confidence in years of careful planning. For the first hour, everything proceeded exactly according to schedule, with radio reports confirming successful captures of key strategic locations. The first sign of trouble came when the mercenary unit assigned to seize the central bank reported that their local contacts had failed to provide promised access codes. Without these codes, the team couldn't access the systems needed to transfer government funds to accounts controlled by the organization. The delay was initially dismissed as a minor setback, but Maya knew it was the beginning of her sabotage plan taking effect. By 6 o'clock, communication problems were cascading throughout the operation, as various teams discovered that their coordination frequencies had been compromised. Units that should have been working together found themselves operating on different channels, creating confusion that allowed government forces to begin mounting an effective counterattack. The architect's calm demeanor began showing cracks as he realized that multiple systems were failing simultaneously. Maya maintained her Elena Kozlov persona perfectly as she worked to coordinate communications, appearing to be troubleshooting problems while actually implementing additional disruptions. She redirected several critical status updates to incorrect recipients and introduced delays in time-sensitive operational orders that left mercenary teams isolated and vulnerable to government response forces. The breakthrough moment came when government troops, reinforced by units that should have been neutralized in the opening hours, began a coordinated counteroffensive that caught the mercenary forces completely off guard. Maya realized that her sabotage had created enough chaos to allow the legitimate government time to organize an effective response. But the battle's outcome was still far from certain. As the situation deteriorated, the architect began implementing emergency protocols that included eliminating potential security risks within the operation itself. Maya watched as 2 team members who had questioned earlier decisions were quietly escorted from the communications center, knowing that they would not be seen alive again. She realized that her own exposure was inevitable as the architect systematically investigated each operational failure. The moment of greatest danger came when Gabriel was brought into the communications center under armed guard. Maya knew that if he revealed their collaboration under interrogation, both of their covers would be completely blown. She had to make a split-second decision about whether to maintain her Elena identity or take actions that might save Gabriel's life but would certainly expose her as a government agent. Maya chose to maintain her cover, watching as Gabriel was taken to a separate room for questioning, while she continued coordinating communications for an operation that was falling apart around them. The guilt of potentially sacrificing someone who had trusted her was overwhelming, but her training reminded her that exposing herself would accomplish nothing except adding another casualty to the situation. The turning point came at 10:15 when government forces successfully recaptured the presidential palace and restored secure communications with international allies. Maya realized that the coup had essentially failed, but the architect was already implementing contingency plans that would allow the organization to extract their personnel while eliminating all evidence of foreign involvement. As evacuation procedures began, Maya faced her most critical decision. She could attempt to escape with the organization and maintain her Elena Kozlov identity for potential future missions, or she could try to ensure that key evidence of the organization's activities was preserved for international prosecution. Either choice carried enormous risks and uncertain outcomes. The opportunity for action came when the architect ordered the destruction of all communication records and financial documentation related to the operation. Maya realized that this evidence represented the only chance for international authorities to understand the full scope of the organization's activities and prevent similar operations in the future. Using her access to the communications center's systems, Maya began uploading critical files to secure servers that her handlers could access later. The process required careful timing to avoid detection by the organization's security personnel, who were systematically destroying equipment throughout the facility. She had minutes at most before someone would notice the unauthorized data transfers. The upload was nearly complete when Gabriel appeared in the communications center, clearly having escaped from his interrogators. His appearance created a moment of chaos that provided Maya with the cover she needed to complete the evidence transfer, but also exposed both of them to immediate danger as security personnel converged on their location. Maya realized that the next few minutes would determine not just her own survival, but whether the evidence needed to prevent future operations would survive long enough to reach international authorities. The failed academy cadet was about to face the ultimate test of everything she had learned during years of secret training, in a situation where even her most experienced instructors would struggle to find a solution. The moment when everything changed began with a single radio transmission that cut through the chaos of the failing operation. A government commando unit had breached the facility's outer perimeter and was demanding immediate surrender from all foreign personnel. The architect's response was swift and brutal, ordering his security teams to eliminate any witnesses who could connect the organization to the failed coup attempt. Maya found herself trapped in the communications center with Gabriel and 3 other team members as armed guards positioned themselves at every exit. The evidence upload had completed successfully, but now she faced the immediate problem of surviving long enough for that information to matter. The skills she had deliberately hidden during her academy training were about to be tested under conditions that would challenge even the most experienced operatives. When the first security guard entered the communications center with orders to execute everyone present, Maya's carefully maintained Elena Kozlov persona finally shattered. Her response was instantaneous and lethal, using combat techniques that were supposed to be unknown to a financial coordinator. The guard fell before he could raise his weapon, but his radio transmission had already alerted the entire facility to the presence of a highly trained operative among the organization's personnel. The transformation was remarkable. Maya moved through the facility with a precision and lethality that seemed impossible from someone who had been dismissed as useless just 2 years earlier. Every technique she had learned during her secret training came together in a display of combat effectiveness that left even Gabriel staring in amazement. She was no longer pretending to be Elena Kozlov or hiding behind the facade of a failed cadet. As Maya fought her way toward the extraction point that her handlers had established for emergency situations, she encountered the architect himself leading a team of security personnel. For the first time since beginning this mission, she was face to face with someone who possessed detailed knowledge of her government's intelligence operations, and the resources to expose her entire network. The confrontation that followed was brief but decisive. The architect had built his reputation on careful planning and overwhelming force, but he had never encountered someone with Maya's combination of training and motivation. When government commandos finally breached the facility's inner defenses, they found the architect unconscious and secured with restraints that would ensure his survival for interrogation. Maya's extraction from the facility required coordination with government forces who had been secretly briefed about the presence of a friendly operative among the organization's personnel. The recognition signal she transmitted identified her as the agent responsible for the intelligence that had allowed the government to mount such an effective defense against the coup attempt. During the chaotic evacuation, Maya ensured that Gabriel and several other local allies who had assisted with the sabotage were included in the extraction. Her handlers had prepared contingency identities and relocation assistance for exactly this type of situation, understanding that operational success often depended on protecting people who had taken enormous risks to support their agents. The immediate aftermath of the operation involved extensive debriefing sessions where Maya provided detailed information about the organization's structure, funding sources, and planned future operations. The evidence she had uploaded during the final minutes of the mission proved invaluable for international law enforcement agencies working to dismantle the network's European leadership. 3 months later, Maya sat in Director Walsh's office receiving commendations from intelligence agencies across multiple countries. The failed coup in Africa had been exposed as a foreign-sponsored operation, leading to international sanctions against the corporations that had funded the attempt. More importantly, the intelligence Maya had gathered was being used to prevent similar operations in other regions. The most significant moment came when Director Walsh revealed Maya's operational codename for the first time. During her years of training and preparation, she had been known simply by designation numbers and cover identities. But her successful completion of the African mission had earned her a codename that would be whispered with fear in criminal organizations around the world. When enemy commanders heard the name Phantom, they would know they were facing an operative who had single-handedly destroyed one of the most sophisticated international criminal networks ever assembled. The failed academy cadet had become someone whose very existence struck terror into the hearts of people who thought themselves untouchable. Maya's transformation was complete, but her mission was far from over. Director Walsh explained that the success in Africa had revealed the existence of even larger criminal conspiracies that threatened global stability. Maya's unique combination of skills and proven ability to maintain deep cover identities made her the ideal candidate for assignments that other agents couldn't handle. As Maya left the building that evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from academy failure to international recognition. The skills that her instructors had dismissed as inadequate had ultimately proven more valuable than conventional military training. Her ability to appear unremarkable while hiding extraordinary capabilities had become her greatest asset in a world where the most dangerous enemies were often the ones that nobody suspected existed.